Hello everyone and welcome to our circle and Salve Women. For today we're going to talk about my reflective moment on the power to filter what we listen to. And it's interesting because we don't realize how many superpowers we have. And I saw this, I think someone sent this to me, like, I'm a teacher, what's your superpower? And I love that. I can't believe that I somehow had placed it here somewhere and I must have placed it elsewhere. But anyhow, I always like to think that, and we should really truly know that you should know you have these superpowers, and we just take it for granted. The ability to hear. I have some students that have like a cochlea, and yet they work hard. They work so hard, and it's just wonderful to see them grow and become this independent, very independent, strong individual. And I think to myself, how many of us take for granted that we can just hear? And so we just let everything in, and we don't realize we also have the power to filter. And that is the other piece to it, is really the power of choice. And I think to myself, you hear sometimes when people say, what is it? I mean, you shouldn't be listening to this, you shouldn't be listening to that, and so forth. And just because the noise is there, just because it is around you, there are just many times where I say to myself, but I'm not hearing it, though. I'm not listening. I'm just, and I mean, my husband will be again first to tell you, it's like sometimes when I really, really, truly feel like I need to listen, I'm listening deeply. And then, you've been together for over 30 years. I'm sure I'm not the only guilty one. I know he's not the only guilty one. We both laughingly admit that, sometimes you just didn't hear everything. But you know that the intent is there when it comes to really the matter of and how important it is. And you know that this is something that needs to be heard. You're intentionally listening. But in times where people are just wanting to just be around you and have some noise, that is okay. But that's when you have to start going, okay, but at what point is this starting to creep in me, where I'm starting to feel darkness or that there's negativity coming from this? Do I then make that decision to just walk away? And that is the piece that I think to myself is very big, that power within to go, okay, you know what, I've filtered and I got what I needed, and then I think I'm done and I'm moving on. So I had mentioned to you the radio. I mean, nothing wrong with television except that screen time, just like when people are on their screen, it can really take some time, energy out of you, and then all of a sudden just make you lose any productivity. And so it's, sometimes we need that downtime, and no one can really suggest that anything that you feel you need for your spiritual uplifting or just your spiritual rest and letting your heart, your mind, your body, and your spirit rest, that anyone should really tell you how long or how much to do. But at the same time, deep inside, you know that there's a piece of you that's telling you, you know what, you're supposed to be up 5 minutes ago, and so you had 5 minutes extra. And that's how I look at it from that perspective. It's like, okay, time to go, and time to get moving. And, you can be meditative. Doesn't mean that if you're sitting there just sitting motionless that you're not thinking. One of the best things that I do is driving, and I turn off the radio. And I'm just thinking, and so there are just times where you can do that as well. Or for those who run and they may be listening to music. My husband is very much into like listening music, and it's funny because the CDs that I get, then I know that if he takes a liking to them, they disappear from my car, goes into his car, and so forth. It's just one of the fascinating things about marriage is that you become one. I mean, truly. And it's funny because it takes a while, some things that you kind of push and pull, and that's just with everything, that power to filter. And I think to myself, when you listen to music, sometimes you realize that it is just for your soul to feel, and that you're thinking to yourself, I just need this right now, this melody, but I'm not necessarily listening to the lyrics. And, who's to judge you for that? Because I know that when you're working out, sometimes I will listen to my Andrea Bocelli. Sometimes I will listen to anything that's opposite of that just to get me pumped up and going. And again, it's not because you're listening to the words. And even if you are, you could be feeding it just the energy that it needs. And I mean, I think about Gideon and how it started off was at 32,000 and it came down to 300. If they had music back then to pump them up, I mean, they probably, would have played it, or that they would have really had each other to pump each other up with the words of wisdom or words of energy or words of power that they gave themselves to make sure that they would really push through and be victorious, and no matter what. And having that strength and that fearlessness, no matter how afraid you are, but really having that intention in your mindset to go, no matter what, I'm moving forward with this, and that we're going to do this together, and my strength is going to be fed off of feeding you off and in the right direction, because no matter how afraid we are on the inside, as long as we are strong together, then we can make it through. And that's that push forward. And I think to myself when I listen, with the radio and the storytelling, I felt like there was that power of imagination, that power to just really truly take in what you wanted to take in, and then use the power of the mind to really absorb what it was, the words that were spoken that you wanted to listen to, that so that it gave you taste, it gave you sound, it gave you color, it gave you feelings, it gave you all those senses that you were allowing yourself to be able to have, that you were gifted with, in that power to be able to hear, and then just again that power to listen, and then again that power to filter what you wanted to listen to and really truly understand in your own way, in your own magnitude. And so when I think with everyone talking over each other, coming here, from the Philippines, and my cousins, it was at that time that I started to really hunger for the nonfiction piece of the world, because fictional, it's fine. I love when my students tell me fictional stories or so, but I just could never really truly absorb the fictional piece. And I know I've written a fictional story that I truly love, because I had my former students that had lived that journey with me when I was teaching a forensic class over a summer. But it's funny how all of a sudden you think to yourself, but this was real to me. And so I didn't really think of it as a fictional story, because I connected to it so well in so many ways. But with the, reading about people's lives, reading about the world and how it works, and how we continue to see why it works and how it's working and how it hasn't worked, and so many different avenues of that full scope that we're still trying to put together. I think it's just amazing. And so for me, I have been listening for quite some time. And I'm sure a lot of us can relate to that you should never hold yourself back from listening, not just outwardly, but also inwardly. It's like you're taking it out, you're breathing it in, you're taking it in, and then you're processing it. And then you're asking yourself, what can I gain from this? And how is this going to help me? And so that, that natural filtration within you, and really asking yourself, how is this going to help me be better and stronger? And that is why by the time that I was a mother and a wife, and after college, I really love going to the gym really early in the morning. And mind you, I could have done it while my children were at school and so forth, but I didn't want to take it away from them. Like for me, it was like I was just so fascinated with being able to stay at home and then have this order. Like after I hit the gym, I would go home and I would think to myself, my second workout's about to happen, because I'm going to go ahead and clean the house. And I mean, I no exaggeration, I vacuumed, I cleaned bathrooms, I swept and mopped the floors every day, because it was part of my regime. Like honestly, if my best as a stay-at-home mother. And it was something that I truly enjoyed in doing, to have this type of order in my life. And so for me, going to the gym and early in the morning, so then I could be come back in time to make breakfast for my children before they would head off to school. It was just, and my husband being home to watch them. It was just such a great partnership that I had with my husband back then with our routine. So I could go in really early in the morning and then be able to then listen in to all this words of wisdom being exchanged, you know, before me and around me. And if I wasn't talking to you directly, I was listening to what you were saying. And, you know, when you're working out and you're on that elliptical, you can hear a lot. And I used to put in for like 30, 45 minutes and not even realize it because I was listening to what people were saying around me. It was like they were my radio. They were truly my radio, and they were these true storytellers that I used to truly enjoy in being in the confines of like the adult grown-up talk that I would sneak into and listen to at times so that I could grow, you know, more maturely in not so much in a faster way, but just a richer way. And I just hungered for that all the time. And I know that there are those of you out there that know that feeling because you do it as well. Don't hold yourself back from that, because it's like when you learn one thing, it is priceless. It's worth all so much, you know, to be able to go, my goodness, I could have read a whole book about that. And yet you just gave me like the cliff notes, the parts that I really needed to hear. And thank you. And so, you know, I think to myself now that even though I have like a routine coming home, and again, this partnership that I have with my amazing husband and our amazing children, is now that the older ones are grown and doing their own amazing things, and then our younger children doing their own, you know, just starting off on their amazing journeys. You know, it's just, to me, it's like now I can humble myself and go, what can I learn from my children and my students? And again, I mentioned that on my last reflection, is really the eye-opening part, the most humbling time, the part that I felt like I really, really grew up in a big way, because I'm still growing. We all are. But, you know, just to hear my oldest son, because there I was again, just lecturing, you know, when I know that others can say this and relate to this. It's like when we lecture, we're actually speaking from our own fears. And I know I did. I know that I was trying to let them know what they could be avoiding, that I saw in people, you know, that they had their regrets, or perhaps I participated in a regret and I would not want them, like I would never want them to understand like just this like immense hunger, you know, where you're like Peter Panning your life that day because you didn't have anything to be able to eat and so forth. You know, you don't want your children to go through that. And so sometimes when you're starting to lecture, it's just because it's like you're yelling at their spirit to not get in front of that moving car. And that's how I've always looked at it. And so now, after my son said, you know, we have our hard times too, in more or less words, it's just different now. It really was so humbling for me. And it really helped me to understand that you're right. You know, I mean, all this time, because I remember Papa talking about putting like banana tree trunks on. If you've ever seen a banana trunk, they're not hardy, and so they actually do break. But they would wrap it. He and his siblings would wrap them around their feet, and then on the way to school, and then on the way back, they would do it again, just so that they had shoes sometimes to wear to school. You know, I mean, he would tell me that. I was thinking, wow, that's amazing. You know, I should be grateful for having one pair. And so now when I look at my children and my own students, you can't tell them that, you know, because for them, they only see what others have. And I see that now. I get that now. The pressure is to really now feel like you don't want to be the last person. You don't want to be the poorest, so to speak. You don't want to be the least smartest, right? Because everyone has their own intellect. They just have to search for it. But there's just so much competition all around, all this pressure to be, and yet I see confusion of how to be. And I get it, and I keep reminding myself of this, and it's really taught me from the moment that I can go back to what my son was saying. It'll always remind me, you know, you're right. The pressures are always there, and the higher you are, the greater you are, the more that you fly like an eagle. Because if you're just a chicken on the ground, there's many of that, right? But as soon as you're soaring in the sky, all of a sudden people see your light, and that can create some bitterness in other people because you're a reminder of where they're at in their life, and that they may try to take you down. They may try to take away your path. They may try to distract you. They may try to really put you in a different position, and where you start to forget that you are there for an eagle, and I get it. And because when I look at my students and I see that in them, like I didn't mention this in my reflection, but a student that was like, telling me, they're saying I'm a teacher's pet. And I said it out loud in front of everyone. I was like, do you? There is nothing wrong with that. Be proud of it and be like, you're right, I am. Because you know what? If that is something you like to do, you're putting together something for your teacher, which she had volunteered to help me out. And I was like, thank you so much. And I know that that's her superpower. She loves to create her own leadership. And I was like, just keep doing it. And for me to say that out loud, it was interesting because I took the power from anyone who tried to take her down from it. It was like all of a sudden I was like, just continue to be who you are and don't ever let anyone take that away from you. That was your decision. You go about it and you do it the best way you can. And it's just amazing when you take that away from others who meant to make you feel like less than yourself. Because it was like, I get it. I totally got that because I was that person as at their age, and I still feel like many times I am, and I know a lot of you are that way, where we kind of hold back our greatness because we feel like, oh my goodness, around us maybe they are uncomfortable with who I am. And I mentioned that in my reflection where you have a mother, and I was just like, you are so good at just always wanting to prove yourself. In each of your arguments you should have become a lawyer. And it was just like her eyes just lit up, like, I know, and I realize now, perhaps no one's ever spoken those words to her, because all of a sudden when she was saying it out loud with me there, it was like she was making sure that what she had heard, I could then affirm in the eyes and ears of everyone around. And when there was just silence, I remember that one time, there was silence, like no one wanted to be rude to her because they were going to give her something different. And so they just returned with a silence and honestly, we knew it was disbelief, because it was like an eerie silence where no one was saying, yeah, that's great. Yeah, you should have. It was more of that silence of just doubt. And I had to break it. I had to say, yeah, that's right. You are absolutely that person that could become this, amazing lawyer, because man, look at you. You always argue with such great conviction, and I just think you're amazing, and it was just like, I need to reaffirm. And it was my position, and I don't care if it's one person to believe, but guess what? I planted that seed, and no matter if she was ever going to end up becoming an attorney, if she ever decided to pursue it, guess what? That belief was there. And then that's that light that you put into people. So I think to myself, doesn't matter what age, there's always going to be something that you can filter in and listen and take in and empower you and make you feel just that dynamite in all the right ways to just then be explosive for other people to go, wow, give me that shrapnel, like give me some of that dynamite that came through, for all the right ways, like, hey, I get that your energy just gave me the energy I needed. So, we were all children once, but that doesn't mean that we can't say we're never gonna think in the heart, mind, body, and spirit of a child, because that is where we all started, and that is all where we should be reminded to think, so that we can then now go, okay, but I know now I have the superpower to filter, so that I know what to listen to and what I should be getting from this. Otherwise, it's time for me to move on and listen to something else, right? So in the words of my mother, God bless us all. We will see you next time. Thank you so much for always seeing the light that I'm trying to send off to everyone. Have a great day, everybody.